Hello, everyone. It's Valerie Hale with At Our Age Podcast and Wealthy Yoga Wine. We're double dipping today because I am talking to Sheree White, who I believe is someone who does good, which is the focus of both of my podcasts. But At Our Age specifically talks about people of a certain age in our 60s and going beyond into our 80s and 90s who are still kicking butt. I'm going to have Sheree White, who is a tax expert, share a couple of stories with her. And I want her to start off and share with us why being a tax expert is more important than being just a certified public accountant, because I just learned that after selling my 40 acres, my inn, my rental property. The IRS and I are having some very serious conversations about capital gains. None of my CPA people ever told me after 22 years that I could be in deep doo-doo with the IRS. Let me introduce Sheree, and she's going to explain to us in small bites. She's got a couple of stories of why it's so important to work with someone like her, and her specifically, because I am working with her. This is not a commercial. It's to really help people understand the difference of working with someone like Sheree, who is a good person in this event and not just your certified public accountant. So, Sheree, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you, Valerie, for having me. The first thing I want to say is there's nothing wrong with CPAs.
Mm.
The issue that I think you were trying to bring up is that you or a lot of people don't get what they don't always get what they need from the CPA. They may start out getting what they need, but tax is a optional category. That's how I'll put it for CPAs. They study it in school. Their CPA exam includes tax. The IRS accepts them as one of the three classifications that can represent a client. But if you look at their continuing, or when I looked, I should say, at their continuing education requirements in the state of Florida, just out of curiosity, I learned that tax is an optional category. Mm. That now being said, I am what's called an enrolled agent, and our purpose, our designation is an IRS designation. It allows us to represent clients in front of the IRS. And the important thing here, the important difference is that our specialty is tax. Whether it be tax preparation or tax resolution, our specialty is tax. All of our continuing education requirements are in tax. So when I tell people we're better than a CPA, we're better than a CPA for tax.
Yes.
Because as opposed to maybe other things. But I think that's what you were getting at.
Yes, of course. I'm not the expert, but that's exactly what I want the listening audience to understand. I've always worked with CPAs, but one thing I have learned through this situation is I wish I had met Sheree 22 years ago, because I could have lessened the pain of the capital gains. I think a lot of people don't really understand the capital gains, but why don't you share a story with us where someone thought after working with you for a little bit, they could do it on their own. And then another story where everything came out nice and clean and tidy. Because
Oh, well,
none of this is quick. None of this is quick. That I understand once you start working with capital gains or tax resolution situation.
So I have a client that's been a client of mine for years, a tax preparation client. He knows what I do. He knows how I do it. He knows how good I am. I always feel funny saying that, but he knows how good I am. He had an issue with the IRS that was not a major issue. But I said to him that I can take care of this for you. And he said, no, that's okay. I'll call them myself. And after multiple calls to them, he called me to complain. And I said, first of all, I have a different number to call than you do, or that you can call. And the other thing is, that's what people pay me for. And he said, that's what I get for trying to do it myself. That was his answer. Spending all that time, getting all that aggravation. It ultimately got resolved, but still a lot of time, a lot of aggravation. The other thing that happens with people is when they try to do it themselves. Okay, so that's, and again, not saying you did, but when you try to do it yourself, what a lot of people do, since it's not their area of expertise, they don't know when enough is enough. You know how they don't want to have to deal with whatever they have to deal with, so they might provide more information than was necessary. And of course, the IRS will never tell you, I don't need that information. You can stop talking, because they never know when you're going to say something that's going to lead them down a different path. So in all of my training, we have been taught that if we can at all avoid it, talk to the IRS so our client doesn't have to. Don't let them do it. And I hate to say let them, but that's where I come in. I talk to the IRS so you don't have to.
And let me interject here, because when my CPA finished my taxes with this amazing capital gains process, she gave me the number to call. I spent days. I can't tell you how many people I talked to. Now, Sheree would not have gone through this because she would have known exactly what to do. Then doing the own research, that's also deadly, because I did two things, which I think I find it hilarious, because I'm working with Sheree now. However, if I hadn't worked with Sheree, I wouldn't think it was funny at all. But doing my research on how to address the capital gains, I filled out two forms, which Sheree knows about. One, I did the uncollectible, but I also did the offer and compromise. So, yeah, so I did both of them. So the IRS doesn't know what's going on with me, and that's why Sheree's taking over, because I didn't know what I was doing. Sheree said the only thing I did right was I bought some time.
That's right. You bought some time, and trying to get yourself considered uncollectible is not an easy task. You can apply for it, but the IRS asks for a lot of information, but it does buy time. It buys time for an expert to figure out how is the best way to solve the problem. And I don't want to talk too much about Valerie's particular situation, but it does involve research in terms of going back and looking at old returns, at looking for the things that maybe the CPA didn't include. That's the thing. Could be little things that have a big effect. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. Another story real quick about how important it is to know who you're dealing with, and not assuming that just because they spend a lot of money in radio advertising, they're the best fit for you. Again, client came to us with a tax issue that had been resolved originally by one of those big companies who I won't name, but he had it resolved by them. And when you have an issue, a large issue, Valerie was talking about offer and compromise. When you settle your debt for less than what the debt originally is, you have to be compliant. They have certain rules,
right,
for a certain length of time. And if you're not, they will add back all of the money that they resolved away, or that they settled away.
Okay. So yes,
Yeah,
right,
all the money they forgave. Thank you.
right, right.
So in this case, this particular client came in and said, this is what happened to him. That in his last year of compliance, he had a small tax debt that he couldn't pay. So he called up the IRS and he set up a payment plan. That's the first problem.
Yeah.
According to the IRS, when you do this offer and compromise for the certain number of years, you can't have a payment plan. You have to pay your taxes when they're due. As far as he was concerned, somebody from the IRS gave him a payment plan, and he was allowed to have it because they gave it to him.
Right.
Okay. 3 months later, he gets a letter from the IRS that says, because you were on a payment plan, you now owe us
Oh, that's so painful.
several $1,000s. And he called them up and they said, well, this was part of your agreement that you signed. Okay. One of two things, or maybe both, didn't happen. Either he didn't read the agreement before he signed it. So lesson there is, if you're going to sign something, particularly if it's from the IRS, read it first. The second thing is, it's possible that that company that shall remain nameless never told him that this is what the obligation was, assuming that he read the paperwork. In our case, we always tell the client, and we always tell them, in addition to verbally, and they're signing the document, but again, if they don't read it, that's not our fault.
Right.
But we tell them to read. And we tell them to read it in writing. We tell them to read it. So we're covered as far as that's concerned. The last quick story, unless you have something you wanted to interject.
No, I just think
I
think it's important what you said about, it's just like when you have an attorney and you have a legal issue, you have to read the contract also, but ask the attorney when you're confused, and if there are red flags that you don't understand. That's why if you're signing something by the IRS that you have sent to them after you reach the solution or the resolution, whichever way you want to look at it, make sure you're conversing with someone like Sheree, because IRS is confusing, and they also want your firstborn child that you've never had. So, I mean, I've been in this situation before, not with capital gains, but I had a CPA in New York who never did my taxes for 4 years. It took a long time to finally find another qualified company to take care of it, and they did, and it was resolved. I paid my payments for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, paid it in full, had the letter that I paid it in full. But I still feel like with this situation, you want a tax expert like Sheree, because you need some hand holding. The IRS, they're serious. And she understands the language, whereas we don't, and we don't need to understand the language. That's why you hire someone like Sheree. So go ahead with the story, but I just wanted people to understand that it is in essence a bit of a hand holding situation, because you know stuff that we will never comprehend.
I think instead of telling the story I was going to tell, I'm going to provide just a drop more, shall we say, guidance.
Okay.
What I want to say is going back to go back to the CPA situation that you had. There's something else to think about when you think about who's doing your taxes or who's resolving a problem for you, who's handling a tax problem for you. So what I always tell people to do is ask 2 questions. What makes you qualified to do whatever it is I'm having you do, whether it be prepare my taxes or resolve my tax problem? What makes you qualified? And when was the last time you took continuing education in taxation?
Mm,
And if they're doing your taxes.
mhm,
And the other thing is there are a lot of trainers out there who do tax resolution, train for tax resolution, who say you don't have to know how to do tax preparation to do tax resolution. I beg to differ with that, because if you don't truly understand how the numbers are arrived at, it makes it more difficult, I think, to do the resolution part, because you're looking at it, you're following a formula, you're following forms, but you're not actually understanding how numbers got where they got, what they really mean,
mhm.
what you need to find out in order to change the outcome. And yes, it does depend upon what kind of resolution you're doing. But that's why the question of what makes you qualify
Mhm.
and when you took continuing education in tax is important. And if this is for a
Law
tax,
changes. The law
that's
changes.
right. That's exactly
And the process changes, and it's not the same it was in 2020 as it is today in 2024. They've made so many changes, and they make changes all the time. And it's your job, not our job, to be abreast of that. That's why you get a
that's
tax expert. I've learned that.
that's correct. That's exactly correct. Why you get a tax expert.
Right. Well, we are going to continue this because I have told Sheree that she really deserves to have her own podcast show, because I firmly believe I'm not the only one who's facing a capital gain situation. I also believe that Sheree is one of the best people I have ever met on this planet for her knowledge, and she's so cool and calm when it comes to something that I'm probably absolutely petrified about. But I know that I'm in really good hands. But both of my podcasts are truly about people who are doing good for other people, which means their community, and in essence, it means the world. So this is why we're going to continue to do this. And if you start having questions, she has an email, but I want you to send it to my email, which is always in the podcast details, so that Sheree and I can build more of a Q&A online. We're never going to do a call-in show. Not happening. We're too much control freaks. We're too much into control. However, send everybody knows in my podcast details, I have ways to contact me. We're going to continue this probably every other week, because there's way too much information for people to learn about their own situation. And Sheree is always taking classes. So we're going to end with that. You can see Sheree is so smart that she has all of her information right there behind her. I also include that in my podcast details, because I post this on Instagram, LinkedIn, Alignable. She's going out there in the universe for all of you who need some bona fide, educated help. Thank you again, Sheree. Yep, go
All
ahead.
right. I just wanted to remind people that if you're going to send an email to Valerie with a question, don't give any personally identifiable information, because email is not secure. So don't give specifics. You can give general information.
A general question. Yeah, don't say I have a situation, because that can go out to you guys, you have no idea. Yeah. All right. Thank you
All
again,
right. Thank you.
Sheree. All right.